Hello and welcome to this Mastering the Machine Automation Academy webinar for the 7th of January 2023. Talked mostly about my plans for the upcoming year and showed a little bit of my Beckhoff simulation project. Had a couple guests and talked to Phil Scruggs and some other folks a little bit during the webinar. Hope you enjoy it. Well, I'm going to go ahead and kind of get it started here. This is the Automation Academy Mastering the Machine webinar for the 7th of January 2023. Don't know that I have a very specific topic today, but it is the new year. And a lot of times with the new year comes planning and reflecting over the previous years. And so I'm going to do a bit of that today. Kind of talk to anybody who shows up about what their plans are for the year and show a little what I've been up to and talk a little bit about partnerships and some new initiatives that I'm working on, things like that. I have narrowed this down to one screen, which used to be on two screens, but explaining a little what this is. This Automation Academy is something I created a couple of years ago, and it is a membership website, kind of helps pay the bills for some of this stuff. I've been doing website stuff for about 10 years or more, starting with a blog and then moving on to my company website. And then I've kind of evolved it into this membership site, and I have a whole lot of documents and things like that on there and training videos. And originally it kind of started as PLC training, but has kind of morphed into a lot of other stuff, just whatever documents and videos I create through the year. So that's what that's all about. These are all the websites, all these different things here shown, company website, blog website, where you can download this Mastering the Machine up here. And then if you're interested in joining the Automation Academy, there's the address for it. And then we also have a free community called IO Central. And IO Central is kind of like a social media site where you can join different groups and interface with people. There's honestly not a lot of people on there yet. It used to be behind the Academy wall, and now I open it up to the public and have been through some spam issues with people just joining and posting bad stuff on there. So it's evolving. But anyway, you can check all those sites out. So this year's topic, or this first topic, I've kind of done this at the beginning of the year for the last couple webinars. I've been doing the webinars for about 2 years, I guess, starting in, I think, November of 2020. So it's been a little over 2 years. And I think at the beginning of the year, I've always done something like this, where I kind of just open it up, talk about what I'm up to, what my plans are, and reflect a little bit over the previous year, and then kind of open it up to other folks. Next year's focus. So this last year, after COVID, of course, I started the website, and also a lot of my traveling was done. So I stopped traveling as much to teach classes in remote sites. I still did, I think, 8 of them last year in like Phoenix and Las Vegas and some things like that. Some classes here, I think one in Raleigh, maybe one in South Carolina somewhere. But then, things have slowed down. And so I started about a year ago doing 2 weeks every month with Automation NTH, which is a big integration engineering company. And I teach classes for them and I develop material for them. And I'm going to continue to do that. But at the same time, I really do enjoy teaching the in-person classes. So I'm going to try to do that more, whether it involves traveling or having people out to my facility here to teach hands-on classes. I've got now up to 12 laptops and lots of software and hardware and stuff like that. So I really am going to focus a bit more on that, in addition, of course, to maybe traveling more with automation training. I need to improve my marketing. I've been talking to people like Stephen Gates, who is very good at marketing. He's got myplctraining.com, and he really, he has some insight as far as how to do classical marketing, building an email list and all that. And I really suck at it, so I need to do better at that. I need to, work more on the Automation Academy. I've added another module to the Mastering the Machine series, which is on systems integration. So for people that are members, I had one thing up there on basically evaluation of projects, but I started the one on quoting and how do you write proposals and actually quote jobs. And I'm going to get into more of the techniques of systems integration, but I think a lot of that's been covered by PLC programming. And when I do my webinars, I'm going to show you something today that gives you an idea what my classes are like, and also leads into systems integration. As some people know, I've been working on Beckhoff a lot. Networking and partnerships. I did pretty well at that last year. Hooked up with some different people, met up with a lot of the other trainers, people like that, and did okay there. I have another book maybe ready to publish on the Beckhoff stuff, but I need to get okay from them because I do have a lot of their material in the book. I have resurrected some of my Fisher Technique stuff, and I am still building trainers. And so I put a question mark after them because I don't know that they're a focus. A little bit of last week's webinar shows some of the things I'm working on, so I left that in here. When I talk about the trainers that I build, these little enclosures, for those who haven't seen them, you build your own enclosure. So they're sort of like these things behind me. I have these kits, and I intended to market them at one point, and it was just too hard to put together. Somebody'd order one, and I had to go to 5 different places to get all the parts for these and build up a kit, and then I had to ship it. And when you're out of town for 2 weeks at a time, that's hard to do. So I kind of gave up on that, but I still use them for my own purposes. These are the 2 Beckhoff trainers that I built, and I think you can probably see a picture behind me of some of the other trainers that I have that are more full size. So there's the kit itself, which is like an enclosure. It's got mesh sides, and then you mount your stuff on the back plane. I have 2 face plates, one with a bunch of push buttons and a little stack light, and the other one with space for an HMI. So I built these for my Beckhoff class and kind of was showing last week a little, or actually 2 weeks ago, a little what I was going to teach in the class. Since then, I have taught that class already. This was to an external customer, Fine Tool here in Nashville. It went really well. And next week, I'm doing the exact same thing for automation NTH folks, this is their lab, right? So I do 2 weeks a month out there, and this is where I had set up the previous class, and that's where we're doing this next class. The difference is this next class is going to be truly on programming and more systems integration. These folks are engineers, and they really do want to learn to program. Whereas the Fine Tool people that I taught last time, they were really more, they wanted to know troubleshooting, right? How to solve problems that they might have with existing equipment. Whereas, the folks at Automation MTH, they want to design equipment, and they're going to use Beckhoff in some new initiatives for life sciences equipment and things like that. So this is a look at their lab and the trainers on the table. Almost exact same setup next week. 4 students, CE1s and CE2s, which are levels of engineering at NTH, and they really want to learn the new Beckhoff stuff. So the Fisher Technique I mentioned, these are the little toys that I hook up to it, and I've got this one just about working, though we're not going to use it. We're actually going to do all simulated programming after they go and scan the IO for the trainers and everything. And then I'm going to probably have this thing working by Monday just to show them what you can do with it, right? And this is what I meant by resurrecting old projects. I may go back in and figure out another way to market the trainers and sell the Fisher Technique stuff, but I'm really not sure. That's not a priority. What else we got? This is leftover stuff from creating that course. I did create a new book. So this is available for download in the Automation Academy. It's a course manual and really guides people through developing a detailed simulation in Beckhoff. And I actually did 3 different languages in it. Did ladder logic, of course, that's kind of my background. Did quite a bit of structured text, which a lot of people are wanting to get into, and some sequential function charts. So that's kind of my plans for the next year. And as I mentioned, let's see back here, I did modify this. I said training videos for Allen Bradley, Siemens, Beckhoff, and Omron PLCs. You know, Allen Bradley and Siemens has been my bread and butter for a long time, but I'm kind of getting paid to learn Beckhoff. So it's really become a platform that I've added to this. I've always done Omron. I think that was the first PLC I did in the early 90s. But Allen Bradley and Siemens has been my main thing, and Beckhoff is becoming a big focus for me with the IIoT stuff and whatever. So I did promise that I was going to show a little bit of that. I have a remote desktop here. I'm going to drag that over, and I have remoted into a laptop that is next to me here, basically. And this is what the desktop looks like over on that PC. Hopefully everybody can see that. This is a little bit of a look at the interface for Beckhoff software, which is called TwinCat. And I created this simulated project. The simulate, you know, this is kind of like Allen Bradley or Siemens from the standpoint that there is a what we call the controller organizer over on the left, which has all your routines, your function blocks, your your main routine that calls everything else, all that. You know, Beckhoff does it in a little different way. It is based on code assists, which is a you know, kind of an open architecture type programming environment. And they've come up with their own version of it that runs in Visual Studio. So if you install Microsoft Visual Studio and then install this over the top of it, then you can run it within the Visual Studio environment. You know, start Visual Studio itself up and open a solution and work on it, or you can open it with a Visual Studio shell. So that's what this is. I bought some new laptops and I installed nothing but Beckhoff on them, so they don't interfere with Allen Bradley and things like that. Ironically, this one actually does have Allen Bradley software on it. And sometimes the Allen Bradley factory talk stuff pops up and tries to interfere with communications, but it's not doing that here. So little look at this project. You know, like I said, I start everybody out in my training classes writing this, which is a basic manual and auto mode type setup, and put a timer in there, and I'll show you a little how it works. Here's the mode control. So in this case, you know, like if you're in manual mode, you'll have a stack light here saying, yeah, I'm in manual mode. You can put it in auto. You can simulate an e-stop here. That's kind of neat. So if you went into cycle start, here's cycle start, 1001, 1002, 1003. Oh, not work. Oh, I don't have a cycle start permissive, which is just a toggleable bit. So here's how you toggle the bits. Come on now. There we go. See how it says true here? That's ready to actually write. Here's a cycle stop permissive. Same thing, says true. You write your variables and they become true. So now I can cycle start, right? So I'm blinking. Let's try it again. 1001, 1002, 1003. There we go. So now I'm in auto cycle. When I'm in auto cycle, I can do things like run a timed auto sequence. This will run if I'm in auto cycle. And then you can do things like simulate an e-stop. Bang, got a fault. It goes into the fault routine. Since this is just a light sequence, I didn't stop the sequence if I go out of auto mode, but normally this would have stopped, hopefully right where you were at. And then I simulate, you know, how do you reset the e-stop, hit the power light. You still have a fault, but you have a different fault. Reset the fault. Of course, you're not in auto cycle anymore. And then you can do another cycle start. So what I do is teach people this first. This is just simple mode control, pretty much the root of every machine. And I don't care if I teach Allen Bradley or Siemens or whatever. This is my method of teaching the class, because rather than just, hey, here's a timer and it sets a bit, it's kind of fun to make it look like a real machine. And I've taken some other programs to a lot more elaborate levels where I'll move things on the screen and make conveyors that move things or pick in places. I've shown that a little bit before here, but this one, the intent is eventually to get there. But the intent of this class is, the people at Automation NTH have already taken a lot of ladder logic stuff and they program in Allen Bradley. What they're not familiar with is things like structured text, right? So here's an example, and I'm online with this, of building a function block and then calling the function block in structured text. Or I think I have some if then else statements and some other logic. Let's see. Yeah, false is in structured text. I would not normally write my programs like this. I do a lot of Allen Bradley and I use ladder logic because that's what people do in Allen Bradley. You have structured text, but you got to pay extra for it. And honestly, it takes more time to program in structured text. Once you get the first thing written, you can copy and paste, but I still think it's easier to drag stuff and drop it in ladder. People try to convince me that structured text is the wave of the future, but your graphic stuff, where's my system? Yeah, so back to this, it's just easier for me to read it. Another thing that I'm teaching that's kind of cool is sequential function charts. For those of you who don't know what this is one of the 5 IEC official languages: ladder, structured text, SFC, function block diagram, and instruction list, which almost nobody uses other than some old school Siemens people use instruction list. But that's what this looks like. And I purposely wrote this sequence in that, right? That language. And then another thing I did is I have kind of some macros on these transitions. So this is object-oriented programming where you can make separate objects and then link them back. And here's an if and statement, right, that allows the transitions based on either time, right? So if it's time, then the transition's happening every second based on a timer, or if it's a push button, right, the logic says, let's go to it, you push the button and it goes to the next step. That's the basic idea. So what I figure is, next week when I teach this class, I'm going to get everybody to this point. They're going to write their own program, and then they can kind of take their project and go wherever they want with it. Write their own simulations, write interfaces with Windows commands and things like that, because after all, Beckhoff is a computer. So I know James was saying he hadn't looked at this software yet, but that's what it looks like, And the coolest thing I think about Beckhoff is you have these visues, right? So those are these things down here. And this is free software. It runs for a week as a simulation on your laptop. And you can't say that about Allen Bradley or Siemens, right? And even if you had their software and it was, and they did give it to you for free, you still got to buy the emulator. And then, you got to buy HMI software. That's separate. That's not part of the Allen Bradley software anyway. You have to buy Factory Talk View. Siemens at least has NTI Portal and Step 7. They have an HMI program built into it, and they have a simulator built into both of them too, but you still got to pay for the software. Here, you don't. So you could write all this code that will do all this stuff for free. And so from a learning standpoint, I like it a lot. It's a little harder to program in, a little harder to set up, but hey, that's why I'm here. I teach classes and post stuff so people can learn it. And there's lots of other people online. I think Jacob Sagatowski has some really good Beckhoff stuff. Ilias Cure on the Twin Controls forum, he's got some good stuff. So anyway, that's what I'm up to. What is everybody else up to? I see Phil Scruggs here. I bet Phil has some plans for the next year. What's up with you, Phil?
Hey, everyone. Mostly just implementing condition monitoring systems. So they're starting to get a little more complex. I haven't dug into Beckhoff too much, but need to dig in.
Yeah, it's a cool environment. I like the environment part of it. I'm not totally impressed with the cost. The PLC that I have, I think, see if I can show the trainer here, just to give you an idea what some of this stuff costs. This little guy, which is this one right here, which is a Windows 10 computer, basically, no IO on it. It was over $1,000. And then the IO was another, I think total, this was like $1,800 for this setup. And here's the frustrating part. It did not include a license on the PLC. I had to buy it separately. And I didn't buy it. So, you know, I got all this stuff, I built it up, and then it stopped running, and I called the tech support guy and I said, hey, why do I have to, you know, generate a new license? And where is my license? It says trial license here. And he said, oh, did you install a license? So no, I bought a PLC. I thought it was a PLC, you know? He said, no, the license is separate. So you have a programming license. Again, programming software is free, and you can generate a license every week. And then the hardware, you got to buy that, but then you got to buy a license for it if you want it to run full time. So it's fine for training. I'm not too worried about it, but wow, you know, when I bought this one, which was sitting on my wall during the tornado, it had a license on it. And I think they just knew, oh, you want to buy a PLC with a license? Of course, you know, that's pretty normal. So that was the frustrating part. So the cost, even though the software is free and you can learn for free, this setup, I want to say this one was $1,800. This one was $1,200. And this is just an integrated PC. Both of these are not capable of very detailed motion control, which you know, I'd like to learn motion control, and you can simulate it and do all kinds of things, but to run the real hardware, you have to have more cores, maybe more memory, more capability. So that's kind of where this is at. But other than that, yeah, that's my plan for next year, is doing this stuff. Like I said, I'd like to get better at marketing, maybe even pick up a partner of some kind to manage all this stuff. I like these trainers. I like the idea of building things and selling them, but for me to fulfill orders when I'm on the road and teaching and things like that's really hard. And even the academy, I had a good conversation with Stephen Gates. He, again, myplctraining.com. He went on his own about 2 years ago, full time, and all he does is create content online and sell his myplctraining.com classes. He does really well at the marketing side. Another person I really admire, who I invited to this but didn't show up, is Tim Wilburn. Some of you may know him on LinkedIn. He's another guy who's so active, but he has his family helping, and who knows, maybe hiring other people. And he's been doing it for 20 years. But boy, he's getting good at marketing. He gets out and shows, you know, his family environment, does webinars and little blurbs and kind of funny stuff. So that's another guy that I've talked to lately. Talked to Vlad Romanov and Sean Tierney. You may know their names. They're other PLC content providers. Lots of people doing a lot more marketing than I am, or better marketing, maybe explaining what things are. I'm not particularly good at that. One thing is, I'm old. I think old people write differently than young people do. That's one of the things that I've been frustrated with. When I write emails, they look very kludgy and old person-like. So, but anyway, so that's my plans. As Phil said, he does condition monitoring. I think, Phil, were you working on your doctorate in it?
Yeah, that's still a work in progress.
Well, that's okay. You can take your time. You're
Took
still
a pause after COVID.
Yeah, I think I'm going to stop share and just talk a little bit. So yeah, Phil, there's some really cool things that Phil has done in like the Raspberry Pi environment. I really, some of the stuff he's done there was just really cool. He had some cameras and was doing some almost facial recognition stuff, temperature, infrared, you know, looking at things. And I started with it, but really never progressed very far. I did a Node Red exercise and I did hook up a camera, but never really made it do something real. I'm closer to that on the Beckhoff.
Yeah, there's a new website called Edge Impulse.
Edge Impulse.
It's all about kind of edge driven programs. So facial recognition, little quick, easy, basically modules where you'll put these on low cost hardware and can kind of get them to do stuff that's useful.
So integrates with Node-RED and MQTT and all that stuff?
It's more of just kind of a methodology for how to do some of the machine learning stuff with lower cost hardware. So it's definitely worth looking into. They've got a pretty slick system, completely free for a limited number of devices. It just makes learning possible. So it's called Edge Impulse, and that's kind of the next better iteration of even some of the stuff I worked on with low cost camera systems.
Yeah. Do you use OpenCV?
Yeah, OpenCV is great for Raspberry Pis, for edge based computers. So, you know, something running a full Windows or full Linux environment. But yeah, I mean, you might want to get even cheaper. So there's pre-made facial recognition or kind of person recognition modules now that an old Google engineer is selling. They're $10 a piece. So if you say, hey, I just want to recognize that a person's here present, you can buy this camera for $10, plug it in, and that's all it does.
Wow. Yeah, I mentioned before that amazing. I was surprised when I thought I was buying one camera for like 18 bucks because I had accidentally bought, as part of a kit, I got an infrared camera and the image wasn't very good. So I figured I'll go out and get one camera, right? Just one little ribbon cable type camera that plugs into the Pi, and 4 showed up for $18, and they're that cheap.
Yeah, it's really incredible. Some of the latest and greatest. I'll send a link in the chat with 2 of those different devices. So the presence detector, you know, it just says facial recognition and then spits out, you know, a high or low signal. Mm-hmm. So you could incorporate that into a system. And then the other is a piece of software. It's a website called Edge Impulse. And that's really, really incredible piece of software that you can use to do facial recognition, do a lot of machine learning type stuff. And it's guided. You don't have to have background in it, right? You go to the website, you know, it's almost like ML for dummies. You know, it is.
Oh, wow.
Like, yeah. You know, it's definitely intuitive and guided so that you can get your first program set up within 5 minutes. You know, it's really incredible.
Yeah, that is very cool. I love machine vision. That's been a big part of what I've done in the last 20, 30 years. And I've kind of dropped off. I have some Cognex equipment. That stuff's so expensive. You know, you want to get into Cognex, and I think you're starting at 2,000 something, and you're working very quickly into the $4,000 or $5,000 range. And for most people to tinker with it, that's a bit on the high side. So I've had the same issue with the PLC. So I'm going to go back and put this on here. I see RTN Lares. I don't know where he's from, but he may not have seen some of the stuff that I was showing here on the screen. So I'm going to put that back here. More of the gadget pictures, and in the context of buying cheap stuff and putting it in a box, right? So this Point.io stuff, of course, I've had people like Jerry Wassinger, who was Pi Plates. Pi Plates is a Raspberry Pi based system that stacks up kind of like this, and you can just connect little devices into it and run them pretty inexpensively compared to, again, Beckhoff and things like that. And again, the software on Raspberry Pi, you know, it's just, you just get a desktop and you write in Python or whatever you want to write, or Node-RED. I was impressed with Node-RED. Jerry showed a lot of that on here. So, you know, get yourself a box and put some stuff in it and start tinkering, man. That's a good goal for everybody next year. Yeah. So Phil put https edgeimpulse.com. I will definitely check that out. As a matter of fact, what happens if I click on it? Yeah, it's coming up in another window. Maybe I can show it a little bit. We put machine learning into real products. So that's what it looks like. Very cool. Leading development platform for machine learning. Yeah. And I think with machine vision, machine learning kind of goes hand in hand with it. And a lot of this stuff, again, to learn it, you know, is free. I mean, you just go to these websites and you can learn by looking at the documents and the projects and talk on the forum, things like that. That's where I've been impressed with Beckhoff. There's some good forums out there and people who just put stuff on YouTube. And I learned from the best, right? Jacob Sagatowski, he's been doing it for years and years, really from a software background. I learned a lot on his site. It looks like here they do the same thing. So for developers, and then they have the solutions, lots of cool stuff. Yeah, here's Twin Controls. That was another one I had up. They're the Beckhoff question and answer stuff. So I log in there as Automatic High, and I had a question on there yesterday. I don't know if it got answered, but this was a neat article, decorator design pattern for those people who are into the Python kind of stuff, object-oriented programming. Let's see if any of my stuff. No, I don't see an answer to my question. I had a question that one of the things I had learned, I don't know if there's any Beckhoff oriented people here, but I tried to link my variables to multiple objects and it would not let me do that. So I'll show you the solution that I came up with. Again, another geeky subject here. So this was my simulated project, right? Here is a hardware project. So the problem that I ran into here, which for those of you who do Allen Bradley and other PLC platforms, there's something called aliasing, where I can take hardware and I can alias tags to the hardware. And in Allen Bradley, I can alias multiple tags to the same point in the hardware. Well, this thing, this actually connects to both of the devices that you see here. So you see the push button box, right? That's on this, and you see the little toy here. So I have to be able to plug the cable into the push button box or the toy, and it wouldn't do both. So I asked a question on Twin Controls, and the solution I came up with was to basically build a variable list called IO. And that's just a list of the IO points, right? And I kind of, this is where they alias. So you type in %I or %Q for inputs and outputs, and then an asterisk, and it automatically goes down and fills in these, right? These in the PLC instance. And then you go down to the hardware and you link the hardware to this. Well, I was trying originally, you know, I had a push button box hooked up. So what I did is try to just connect all the push buttons directly to the IO points that were appearing down here. And the problem is now I can't plug my conveyor in, or if I do plug my conveyor in, then, you know, the up prox or the down prox is named push button 1. So that's not good either. So what I really did is just made things like push button equal to IO in, and it's an extra step, but so be it. Right. So that's the solution I came up with, but I kind of asked on their forum, hey, do you guys know of another way to swap variable tables in and out, right? So that you don't waste time by creating all these extra variable tables, just swap them in and out as needed. And so far, no answer. But anyway, this is an example of my hardware version of a program. And the other thing I really liked about Beckhoff is I copied stuff from this other program and exported it and just imported it back into the real hardware project. So when I needed the system routine, I exported this, right? And it's all tested and it runs. Let's go back out and do a cycle stop. There we go. So this all ran and I just imported it into the hardware project. I didn't need to recreate anything. So that's true modular programming. I did the same for the visualizations, right? I imported the mode control visualization into the hardware project. So mode control, and then I made a new system control visualization here. But, you know, so I think Phil and I, one of the things we've had in common is we're both looking for cheap or free things to learn with, right? Can't always buy all this expensive hardware. And, you know, even the PLCs behind me, one of these things is 20 some years old and it still costs you $1,000 to make a PLC. That's just too much. So I really like the fact that this stuff runs for free for a week, right? You still have to renew your license every week, but it's a free license just to play with this stuff and make it work. So this is up Phil's alley. I'm doing very simple data acquisition here for the data screen, just logging up and down time in the different modes and things. So neat stuff to play with. For those of you who are on the Automation Academy, all this, the manual that I wrote, exactly how to do this is on the Academy site. So it's about a 90-page manual. It's like another book. And I may try to publish it at some point, but I need permission from Beckhoff. Meeting chat. So Phil put $10 per person, usefulsensors.com, detect, count, recognize sensor. So that's I think the camera that Phil was talking about, which cameras used to be, I don't think you could get into a camera for less than $1,000, you know, 20 years ago, and now $10. Phil, is that a $10 per person?
No, $10 per camera. So it's
camera.
a little. Now this is not necessarily a camera that's going to be quality enough to do quality inspection on parts coming down a line like a Cognex, you know, high definition camera. But it is the type of camera where you can incorporate it into a product and count people in the room, you know, just kind of get environmental information that's often needed for certain machine operation.
Yep. Well, and the other thing is that's actually a lot cheaper than a photo eye. I mean, we had this discussion a long time ago. You know, photo eyes, I don't think you can get into them for less than about 20, 30 bucks, even for a through beam photo eye. You got to wire it up on both sides and everything else. And of course, you got to remember
this doesn't have standard connectors or protective plastic casing or weatherproofness, right? It's just a board with a camera on it. So you'll have to do some engineering around it if you want to really incorporate it into a product. But for prototyping and learning and
yep,
you know, for an office environment, it's perfect.
Well, and that's where this stuff comes from, right? We've talked a lot about that. You 3D print your own little box and you put it in there, and then you harden it a little bit from the outside, and you know, buffer the power supply or whatever you got to do. But at the same time, by the time you get done with it, it's kind of like my trainers. You know, these trainers, they cost me probably $200-300 worth of parts. That's not bad, you know, but you got to go to all these sites and, you know, all the little push buttons, you got to go to Balmain on Amazon and buy them all. And they're cheap. They're, you know, I don't know, $8 a piece or something, but you got to buy them all. You got to unpack them, put them in a kit so that people can use them. These little switches are from like DigiKey. The little potentiometers are from some third place. The e-stops and the light are from Automation Direct. All this plastic stuff is from a local plastics company, and then the extrusions from Bertelkamp, and you got to pay for people to cut stuff. By the time you've got 5 and 6 vendors and you pile all this stuff up together and then put it in a box and ship it, you've spent hours and had to, you know, in the case of this plastic, I have to drive down there and pick it up. They don't have an easy way to ship the stuff. So that's, again, my New Year's resolution, if you want to call it that. Part of that is to figure out ways to get that stuff done. You know, Amazon has these things where you can get 5 or 6 different vendors to all put stuff in the same box. So if I went to the Balmain people or I don't know, Automation Direct probably isn't on Amazon, but they would put all these separate items in a box for me and fulfill it at my store. You know, that's an idea. You know, these Fisher Technique things, I ran into the same thing. I'm a distributor for these. But for me to sell this, I've got to figure out a way to either wire these little connectors in there myself or give it to other people to wire in, make it a kit, and then ship this direct. But these things, when I get them, they're on these boards and they're in a big, container with lots of peanuts and stuff. And to unpack them, put that connector on it, pack it back up and ship it to a customer probably cost almost as much as the unit itself does. So, and then there's my time, right? And how to ship it, go get UPS to come pick it up. I don't know what the answer is for some of these, they're good ideas I've had to create entrepreneurial things, but when it comes down to it, my best so far income producer's been to teach in-person classes. That's where I make my money, or working for NTH directly doing content development. But these entrepreneurial ideas, that's where the stuff, eventually can turn into something, as they say, maybe go viral or whatever. But I've never figured out how to market that and how to implement some of it as a one-person company. That's always the dilemma. So, some of the things I mentioned here, if people had business questions, I've been in business for myself for, I guess, most of my life, probably at least 20 some years of it. And I've learned a lot about, having ideas and trying to put something together and then go sell those ideas. And some things have worked and most haven't. I put $100,000 once into a machine when I owned a machine building company that was going to take the world by storm, man, the Smart Bench. And I built a big prototype and I brought it to trade shows, and I did get jobs out of it. I got to build other machines, but nobody bought a Smart Bench ever. And I put $100,000 into development of it and built a big one. And actually it turned into my little tabletop factory that I had in my training facility back before the tornado. So the whole thing's gone now, every little piece of it. I may have some of the valve banks or things like that, but there's an idea that, had this big entrepreneurial idea, beginning of the year, big plans, and then I worked on it for several years and never sold one of them. I have sold one or two of these here and there. Of course, to ABD. Phil took a ride down with me to Miami, and we went and visited American Beverage Depot, and they bought one of these trainers, and they bought a Fisher Technique high bay, the high bay, storage and retrieval system, which is cool. It's like a palletizer. So the idea was to train their employees how to program a palletizer. Cool idea, but he was the only one who ever bought one of these setups from me. At the same time, I use them for my own classes, so I guess it hasn't gone to waste. And they may get resurrected. I may use these for other projects. Let's see, do I have a picture of their other trainer? No, I don't. You can see them behind the thing. These trainers, like this one that you can see in the background, these go for about $4,500 with a PLC in them. That's what Automation NTH builds. And they have only sold these to universities and I think, Dexcom, that kind of thing. They're not in the business of marketing trainers, but this one's less than half the cost of that. And it, again, ships as a kit. So that was an entrepreneurial idea I had that's grown out of the training business, but once again, it's never really turned into anything. But still have high hopes. So that's kind of what I'm up to this year. That's my next year's focus. And everybody else has kind of chimed in there with theirs. Phil's working on his conditioning monitoring. And any of you other guys, what are you all up to? You got any big plans for the next year, or are you just gonna kind of continue on the path that you're on?
Yeah, I'm Matt Klein, so I'm a plant electrician. So when I first started, I spent my career as a construction electrician. So a lot of new installs, wiring, figuring out load, demands and meeting those demands and plus extra, the whole works. But when I started as a plant electrician, that was a whole new avenue. And to be honest, I was overwhelmed. So I was just thinking this morning. So when I first was introduced to PLC, I listened to the IO, the inputs, outputs, and so I'll make an observation, say, oh, that's an output. No, that's an input. So I'd work a little bit more. Oh, that's an input. No, that's an output. So I've come a long way since then. So I guess my goals for the new year is just keep learning. Here about a year and a half ago, there's all in total, there's 3 real experienced automation programmers, all that kind of stuff. They all left. And so I was just faced with the dilemma, like, I need to buckle down and learn this stuff. And it's been a fun ride. I really come to enjoy it, but I also realize there's just so much to learn. So, but anyway, that's where I'm at.
That's cool. The good news is there's so much really free stuff out there, right? Just YouTube and whatever. And then there are some inexpensive sites. There are books. There are, ebooks. That's the cheap way to get a book. I guess the printed ones are a little more expensive, but I know you've been on my site and downloaded some stuff probably as you've needed it, and maybe looked at some of the videos. I think that's useful. And then that didn't exist 20 years ago. You certainly didn't have a YouTube. The internet was just starting. You couldn't just search for stuff. Now the answer to every question is right in your phone. I mean, it's amazing how things have changed. So,
no, that's true. But the thing with the phones is it's such a small screen. I'm approaching 50, so I guess I'm getting to the point where I'm an old guy. So anyway,
yeah, I hear you there. I'm 62, and I'm slowing down, but I don't think I'll ever quit doing what I'm doing now. I've mentioned this before. I'm truly retiring. Why would I ever do that? I love teaching. I sit in a room and shoot the shit with people for 8 hours. That's training, right? That's in-person training. You just sit there and show people the stuff that guide them through the software and shoot the breeze, and it's very enjoyable. So I really want to. That's a lot more of what I want to do. And then this this internet outreach stuff's great, but it's really a means to an end to either try to land classes or I don't know. I'm creating this stuff anyway for Automation NTH or for my own classes. So why not have a website for it? That's kind of where some of this grew out from. But yeah, I hear you. And I don't know that at 50, I would have even considered starting a business if I hadn't already owned a business, because it does suck up a lot of extra of your time, and it has its own frustrations, so, you could go be an electrical contractor, and start your own contracting company, but you'd find yourself working 7 days a week and not always make, if you're not working, you're selling. And if you're not selling, you're working. And that's the tough part.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to go ahead and go to the final screen here. I always kind of advertise a little bit on here. Here's the IO Central website. Here's the Automation Academy. That's one of the addresses for it. There's several ways to get there. I don't know what the topic's going to be next time. For a long time, I had guests on here, some pretty well-known guys, but it's gotten very difficult to arrange the guests. That's been one part of a problem. And then also I started doing things more on Saturdays because a lot of my Fridays were now taken up as soon as I started doing more stuff for NTH. So it's harder to, get people to get up early and come out and talk on a Saturday morning. But there are a lot of people I'd love to have as guests on here. And Phil's been a guest a couple times. Phil always could scrounge something up to show people. That's the cool thing. He works on these little projects that are pretty neat. And I don't know how much he could show about what the big, expensive, high-tech monitoring systems are like. Maybe a PowerPoint or something on that would be cool, Phil.
Yeah, I'll have to see if I can put something together, maybe for a month from now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Give me a few weeks.
But yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at. Plans for the new year. I always have bigger plans at the beginning of the year. The end of the year, you're all winding down, and then sometimes in the middle of the year, something comes up and I get excited about it and start working on that. But I hope I'm done with new ideas. I hope I just work on the existing ideas I've got. I've got too much stuff going on as it is, and I just need to stick to the things I already do. Maybe resurrect things like the Fisher technique trainers. I'm actually going to take one apart today and get it running with my Beckhoff trainer, get that little conveyor working. It went through the tornado, so there's like grit and stuff jammed in the conveyor. I tried to turn it. All the motors run, all the photo eyes work, but it wouldn't drive the conveyor. It kind of grinds, and it's just a real hard push. So I'm going to take it apart and learn something more about Tinker Toys and Lego type stuff, right? That's kind of what these are. They're like Legos, except they lock in place, right? They have slots and T-slots and things like that. So this is the conveyor I was talking about, and that's the one with the grid in it that it doesn't, I kind of electrically got it running and got all the little motors and sensors working on it, but I never did, it won't drive it. There's something wrong with the linkage. So I got to take it apart just like a real conveyor, get down into the catenary loop and literally it has a catenary loop like a real conveyor, and you got to take the slats apart just like you do a real conveyor. It may be just as hard. It's going to take me some playing with today, but I like those little toys. I hope to resurrect a little of that this year, maybe buy another kit or two, maybe rebuild the ones that got blasted in the tornado. I took them and cleaned them and put them in a box, and it's like a big Lego kit. Phil, if you get a chance, man, if you're ever up the Nashville way, I'd love to have you in and kind of show you all my toys here.
Oh, for sure. I'm also curious if there's some 3D printed versions now out there of similar capabilities.
You could make them for sure. And there's guys at NTH, there's two guys that are working on different 3D printed stuff. One of them does it at home, and they've made some very lightweight things that absolutely, you just have to figure out what the little nodules that fit in the slots, what their size is, but then you could make anything to hang on these. And like I said, I have so many blasted parts, where I had to take stuff apart and clean it in a bucket after the tornado hit, that, it's like having all your extra Legos. So I can build about anything with it, but man, it is time consuming. It's another little story here before we shut it down. My grandson is kind of into Legos. So went to the Lego store in the mall, and I bought like a Marvel spaceship. It's really cool. It has, Captain Marvel and Iron Man and Thanos, right, with his big glove. And you have to assemble all this stuff. And I was surprised. There's probably, in this little spaceship, there's lots of moving parts. It actually shoots little plastic pieces out of it. It took me, I don't know, an hour and a half to build, and had hundreds of parts. I was just really surprised. Of course, Legos do come apart a little more, and I know they have some automation kind of stuff, but they really haven't gotten into the factory type stuff. But I did that for Christmas, and I'm going to when my grandson gets a little older, I'm going to give him that little model already built, and he can take it apart or play with it or whatever. I bought him a regular Lego kit for Christmas, but I always thought Lego would have been a great platform for factory stuff, but it doesn't stick together like this stuff does. This is T-slots, and things really link together more. So this has been cooler. Plus, these have air cylinders, actual pneumatic pumps and air cylinders and hoses and all that kind of stuff. So it's been a pretty cool platform. But anyway, I'm going to kind of end it here. Next webinar again, January 28th. This will be on YouTube. And I don't know, end of slideshow. There we go. And that's it for me, and see y'all later.